Well, from the populace of the old world to the populace of the new world. That is the schedule of the German Chancellor at the moment. After commenting on the results of the election in the Netherlands, she is now focused on the United States. Tomorrow, she'll pay a visit to the White House. It will be her first meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, their first face-to-face encounter. And the world will be watching every move as two world views attempt to share the same space. Now, Trump has repeatedly called Merkel a failed leader, and he has criticized her policy on migrants. And in true Merkel fashion, the German Chancellor has been reserved in her comments, reminding Trump of the values that the U.S. and Germany are supposed to share. In a moment, we'll offer Merkel some talking points. But first, more on what Trump and Merkel have already said about each other.
In short, Hillary Clinton wants to be America's Angela Merkel.
I'll hold my talks with President Donald Trump in this spirit in the coming week.
And you know what a disaster this massive immigration has been to Germany and the people of Germany. Crime has risen to levels that no one thought they would ever see. It is a catastrophe.
Even if there are different opinions, compromises and chances are easiest to find when there's a respectful exchange with one another.
I think Brexit's going to be a wonderful thing for your country. I think when it irons out, you're going to have your own identity, and you're going to have the people that you want in your country.
I'm deeply convinced that the transatlantic partnership, based on common values, is in all of our interests, not only for us Europeans.
All right, I'm joined now here at the big table by Fred Abraham with Human Rights Watch in Berlin. It's good to have you back here at the big table, Fred. We know that Human Rights Watch has sent a memo, if you will, of talking points to Mrs. Merkel, suggestions for what she should say to the president. Let's go down the list. First thing you said is the budget.
That's right. So the President Trump just released his proposed budget. We have to see where this goes. You know, the budget is a long process. It will go through Congress. But if even half of the proposals on foreign aid get through the cuts, then these could be serious threats to peace and security around the world. We hope Chancellor Merkel will raise these points because the U.S. is the largest funder to the United Nations. And, you know, let's be clear. I mean, this is peacekeeping. This is feeding millions of hungry people. This is vaccinating children. And these are programs that directly support and promote and protect human rights.
But what you're talking about are also soft power things, aren't you? And Trump really doesn't respect soft power, does he?
Well, the flip side of the budget he's proposing to these cuts is a radical increase in military spending. And this is extremely troubling. You know, look, we're not a pacifist organization, and there's a time for hard power. But there's also a time for soft power, which means diplomacy, conflict prevention, conflict resolution. And, you know, that means Chancellor Merkel expressing the importance of U.S. leadership on the diplomatic stage for the purposes of peace and stability and security.
And are you worried that if Trump is successful with these cuts, that there's going to be this huge vacuum in terms of multilateral leaderships in struggles for peace? I mean, Trump has been very honest about his disdain for supranational multilateral organizations.
Look, well, what's very troubling is President Trump's apparent reliance and belief in military force as the solution to the world's global problems. And that just isn't the case. And the fight against terrorism is a classic example. You know, you can battle ISIS using military might, and that needs to be a part of the equation. But you also need to build alliances with moderate Sunni leaders. You also need to avoid civilian casualties. And you need diplomacy and negotiations. These are the complex environments in which we operate. I think Chancellor Merkel appreciates those complexities. I'm not so sure the U.S. president fully does.
The U.S. president today saying that, you know, it can happen twice. His revised executive order, the travel ban on 6 Muslim countries, has been stopped by 2 judges. What can Merkel say to him in terms of immigration and migrant policy. I mean, he has said that she's a failed leader when it comes to that.
I mean, look, I think we need to be frank. You know, she's not going to go to him and lecture him on human rights. You know, that's not going to happen. I think the starting point is the letter of congratulations that she sent to him after his electoral win, which is looking forward to cooperation on the basis of shared values. What are those? Those are democracy, freedom, rule of law, dignity. And that's the tone. And we don't expect her to preach and bang the table on human rights, but we hope she doesn't bend on those fundamental principles and the shared values of both Germany and the United States.
And what does she do when, even if he were to bring up, let's say the doors are shut and it's just those two, and he brings up Brexit? He is a fan of Brexit, and he thinks it should spread. What should she say in response to that?
Look, I mean, I think the message is very clear that there is a strength, and not just as a principle, but as a practicality to multilateral institutions, whether it's through the United Nations, including NATO, the military alliance, and that backing away from that rapidly opens the door to insecurity, jeopardizes peaceful alliances. And, you know, that's the broad and overarching argument here, that there is a time for military force, but we cannot just discard the soft power of diplomacy and politics that are critical to maintaining stability and promoting human rights.
Merkel is very good at playing a poker face. You know, lots of critics even of her have said that she's really good at not letting her feelings show. She's going to be sitting across the commander-in-chief of the U.S., who has called her a failed leader. What can be done? I mean, what would you advise her to build a bridge with someone who basically has said he wants to be maybe your arch enemy?
It's going to take some artful political skills, which I think she has. But look, the key is, you know, Germany and the U.S. are close, and that relationship is critically important. She has to maintain that, you know, so she's not going to lecture him. At the same time, she can maintain some critical distance, as Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau also did. And be clear, the relationship is long and deep and will remain between Germany and the United States, on the values.
On the values. Would you say that this is an example where Canada is actually, you know, is going to end up being somewhat of a role model for the Europeans to follow in dealing with Washington?
I mean, possibly. It remains to be seen. I mean, I thought that Trudeau struck the right balance where, you know, they make clear that there are certain principles, human rights, rule of law, institutions, and international institutions, including international obligations. And wherever Trump may take the United States, or wherever the United States may go, Germany still will respect those principles and respect those values.
What about surveillance, data protection, spying? Merkel has walked a fine line. Even in the days of Obama, she had to walk a fine line. Is this a situation, an issue where Trump obviously has the leverage on her?
Look, it's a key issue, right? And the fundamental point is this. The U.S. vast powers of surveillance must be respecting the privacy of United States citizens, but also of non-U.S. citizens, meaning Germans, Europeans, and other people in the world. And she has a point to make here, having been a victim of this surveillance herself, by the way. And so, you know, she has a right and an obligation to stand up for the privacy rights of her citizens, in Germany, and to say that surveillance must be targeted and specific, cannot be broad and non-specifically justified.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to be a fly on the wall tomorrow when those two meet. Yeah. Fred Abraham with Human Rights Watch here in Berlin. Fred, as always, we appreciate you coming and sharing your insights and your talking points. Thank you.
Thank you.